Ding dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I'm the Jobless Coder, and today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, more specifically the future potential of Bitcoin. Now before I get started, make sure to click the subscribe button as well as the bell icon if you're new to the channel, and now let's get started.
Bitcoin is the answer to those problems.
Essentially, I'm going to explain to you why I think that Bitcoin is going to become the de facto currency used by every single country, nation, every single people, every single culture, every single race and religion on this earth will eventually use Bitcoin as one global dominant currency across the planet. Comes down to the governments of the world response to this coronavirus. If you look at what's happening in all first world nations around the world, the United States, Canada, Britain, all of England, all of these countries are pumping trillions and trillions of dollars into the economy, and it's not sustainable. They're giving out free government packages, Trump bucks in the States, the CERB here in Canada, and all of this money is being printed and backed by absolutely nothing. And that's the one essential problem with currency of any kind, is that it is subject to hyperinflation. That's what happens when essentially the value of the dollar becomes nothing. If you look at countries like Venezuela, the value of the dollar became absolutely worthless. If you look at the history of currency and money, essentially many years ago in the past there was gold, and people used to trade gold for different objects, or they used to trade their services for gold. But the problem with gold is that it's very heavy and difficult to transport. It's also easy to falsify, and it's not easily divisible. So if you wanted to pay somebody a portion of your gold as opposed to the whole gold bar, it was rather difficult to do that. That's where banks basically came in, by creating a system of currency where the bank would hold the gold and they would allow you to exchange the currency for gold, equal amount of currency for equal amount of gold at any time. And then that way you don't have to worry about transporting the gold in like massive chests of gold or having it get lost at sea. It's easy to carry around currency in your pocket. That's what became known as the gold standard. And because the United States of America held the primary sum deposits of gold in the world, United States became the wealthiest nation in the world. But what happened was, in 1971, President Richard Nixon took everyone off the gold standard, meaning that currency was no longer directly attached to gold. The value of currency was not the same as the value of gold. He essentially allowed the federal banks to continue to print money as much as they wanted to, or as much as they felt they needed to. So then at that point you say, what exactly is the value of money tied to? Well, it's tied to the supply and demand chains of an economy, as well as the government structure. It's tied to a variety of many different things, and it's too complicated to go into extreme detail for a video of this nature. But essentially, the value of the dollar is tied to the trustworthiness of the government who runs that dollar. That's why when a country fails, like Venezuela, when the government becomes corrupt and no longer trustworthy, the value of the dollar tanks, because you can no longer trust it's worth anything. So what happens is the more and more and more the governments of the world continue to become corrupt politicians and things of that nature, corrupt companies, evil organizations, the more and more and more inflation occurs, and therefore the value of the dollar goes down. It basically becomes worthless. Now that's where Bitcoin comes into play, and some economists have suggested that the value of Bitcoin has an upward cap of $10 million per Bitcoin. I'm going to say that's wrong. I'm going to say it's more, and here's my reason why. So if you look at the history of Bitcoin, in 2009, Bitcoin was introduced into the world as a response to the failure of the governments to deal with the 2008 financial collapse. Because what happened in 2008 after the financial collapse, the federal bank, they bailed out the banks. They bailed out the multi-million-dollar businesses because of their mistakes. And the average citizen was the one that got steamrolled over. People lost their jobs, people lost their houses. It was an absolute nightmare. Well, something similar is happening with this coronavirus response. The government is pouring billions and trillions of dollars into the economy. They're handing out money left, right, and center. They're shutting businesses down. Now, people don't realize, like I said, the value of the dollar is tied to the supply and demand chain. When that chain is broken, then the value of the dollar becomes worthless. You think, what is it that you can buy with your dollar? What can you buy with a dollar? Well, you can take a vacation, buy an airplane ticket, except you can't anymore because the airports are shut down and all the hotels are closed, so you can't vacation. Okay, maybe you can go and buy a nice video game, except you can't because the stores are closed. You can buy one online, sure, but you can't go buy a physical game system at the store unless you go to Walmart. Although you think about what Walmart offers. Well, they have limited hours. They're only letting so many people in the store. People don't want to deal with that. They don't want to be subjected to the possibility of getting COVID. So you basically can only buy food. What happens when the food chain runs out and there's no more food to buy? Well, now you can't buy food with your dollar. So you can't take a vacation with it. There's a moratorium on evictions right now because of the situation. So you don't need to pay your rent with it. Cell phone providers have said they're no longer disconnecting people that don't pay their cell phone bills. And eventually you're not going to be able to buy food with it. You say, what is this dollar worth? It's worthless. It's worth nothing. It's a piece of garbage at that point. So yeah, the government could print $1 million and give it to you, but what are you going to be able to do with it? You're not going to be able to buy anything with it. And I think that is the primary catalyst for the transition over to Bitcoin as a de facto currency. Now, if you look at the history of Bitcoin, it's also in the public's eye been viewed as dangerous. And people say, oh, Bitcoin, who would buy anything with Bitcoin? That's only used by criminals on the dark web to, you know, buy drugs and guns and things of that nature. Because that's what one of the number one criticisms of Bitcoin is, that it's only used by criminals. And I'm about to completely destroy that notion of an argument against Bitcoin. What was used by criminals before Bitcoin? Cash, money, credit, to buy the drugs and guns and things that they bought on the dark web. So if your only argument against Bitcoin is that it's used by criminals, then you should just dump all your cash and throw your credit cards in the garbage, because they're used by criminals just as much. So you can't say that Bitcoin's only used by criminals, because everything has been used by criminals. Well, what about the argument then that Bitcoin is not secure, that you're going to easily lose your money? While it is true that millions and millions of dollars have been lost, typically a Bitcoin wallet consists of a 12-word key, a 12 to 24-word key, and it's an exact order of words in the English language alphabet that you have to type in that order in order to access the money. And if you lose that information, then you essentially lose that ability to use the money. But that places the responsibility of your money on you. It is your responsibility to keep those keys, as opposed to handing your cash to the bank and placing the responsibility on them to insure you for their money, even if they get robbed. And most banks do have insurance up to about $1 million or so if they get robbed, to be able to pay everyone out that has lost the money as a result. But the thing is you're subject to the bank's regulations. Whatever they say goes. If the bank says they're going to charge you excessive fees for holding money in their account, then that goes. The bank might have a policy that it takes 3 to 5 or even 10 business days to transfer money between accounts, and that may just not be acceptable for some people. In fact, most banks in Canada, the policy is 15 business days to convert US dollar checks into Canadian dollars, and for me, personally, that's not acceptable. But when it comes to Bitcoin, the policy is placed in your hands. And that's why I think it's going to replace the traditional banking system. Because if you look at a lot of the regulations in the bank, they're still using stuff that was deemed appropriate back in 1855. It's no longer 1855 anymore. We have the digital technological revolution. It's the 21st century. Get with the freaking program. This is where Bitcoin is going to become the currency of the 21st century. Number one reason is the fact that it places your cash, your responsibility in your own pocket. You no longer have to worry about securing it in a bank anymore. The number 2 reason why Bitcoin is going to be adopted in the future as the global-wide currency is the fact that it's not controlled by any one government or company or anybody. It is run on the blockchain. And essentially, I'm not going to get into the technical details of the blockchain, but essentially that means that it's controlled by no one. The government can't just decide, we're going to print another billion trillion Bitcoin because we feel like it, like they're doing now with the regular US dollar currency and Canadian dollar or whatever. And because of that, you say, well, what is it backed by? Gold was gold. It was valuable at a specific cost. When currency was introduced, it was backed by gold. And then at some point, it was taken off the gold standard and it was backed by the government. Then you say, well, what is Bitcoin backed by? Bitcoin is backed by the miners who mine Bitcoin. And it's used as an analogy to gold mining. And it's very, very accurate, to be completely honest. If you look at the history of gold mining, like the Klondike Gold Rush, when it was discovered there was gold in the Klondike, all these people rushed up there to go mine it. And it was very easy at the time to mine gold. You could walk out into the stream in your bare feet, stick your hand in the river, and pull out a massive chunk of gold. Whoop-de-doo, woo, you're a millionaire now. But then, as all of that gold off the top surface of the land got recovered, it became more difficult because the miners had to dig down into the ground. And now if you look at gold mining today, there's maybe a few thousand, if that, companies around the entire planet that are mining gold, because it requires multi-million dollars worth or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of expensive equipment. It requires a lot of time to dig down into the earth and get that gold. It has to be specially processed through these specialized machines to collect and recover the gold. So the price to mine it goes up. And this is what's happening with Bitcoin. And I'm about to explain why. When Bitcoin was introduced, the reward for adding a block to the blockchain was 50 Bitcoin per block. Now, a block consists of a whole ton of mathematical computations and calculations that need to take place on your computer processor. And the reward for allowing your processor to do those calculations was that you would get Bitcoin in return. So assuming that you yourself on your computer was able to mine 1 Bitcoin, that meant that you added 1/50th of a block to the blockchain. What happened was, though, is that right from the get-go, there was a system that was put in place that after every 210,000 blocks added to the blockchain, the reward would become half. This is what became known as the halving event. And there's been 2 of these events so far. So when Bitcoin was introduced in 2009, you got 50 Bitcoin per block you added to the chain. After about 4 years, it was about 2012, 2013-ish, there was another blockchain halving event where it was $25. And then in 2016, again, it's down to 12.5 blocks, or 12.5 Bitcoins now. So for every block you add to the blockchain, you only get 12.5 Bitcoins. And we are just 2 days, well, roughly 2 to 3 days away from the next blockchain halving event. Means that the price that you will get as a reward for adding 1 block to the blockchain will go down to 6.25 Bitcoin. So much like an analogy to gold mining, when the reward you get for mining Bitcoin becomes in half, that essentially means that the price to mine it doubles, which means that a whole ton of miners are going to have to pull out altogether, just like a whole ton of people left the Klondike when it was no longer profitable, because it's going to cost them more than it's going to come back in actual revenue from the Bitcoin. And now this is the very, very important part about Bitcoin. People think that when the price goes in half, the Bitcoin's going to drop to 0. Actually, no. It's just like gold, which means the price is going to go up. Initially, you're going to have a period of maybe a couple months, maybe even a year after this halving event coming in just a couple days where the price is most likely going to drop. And that's because I said that the price is backed by the miners. When a whole ton of miners leave and they're gone, they're no longer mining Bitcoin, then the trustworthiness of its value goes down. So there's going to be an initial drop in the price, but after that, it's going to bounce off the fucking moon. Here's a chart showing the resulting price of Bitcoin following these halving events. So after the first halving, you can see that there is a slight decrease before it shoots up very, very drastically, and then it continues to go up over the many coming years. After the second halving, there is a drop in the price, and it's going to shoot up. And this is where we are today. We're very closely approaching the third halving. And then after another 4 years, roughly 2024, there'll be another halving where the price will be dropped to $3, $3.125, not dollars, Bitcoin, that you will get for adding a block to the chain. So at that point, even more people are going to drop out of the Bitcoin mining game. Google estimates there's roughly 1 million people that are all mining Bitcoin. But let's say that when the price drops, then 50% of those people will come out of the market. They're no longer financially viable to continue mining Bitcoin. What happens when all these miners leave is the price of the Bitcoin already in circulation goes up because it becomes more valuable like gold. Now, if you look at the price comparisons between the last halving and now, just the other day, in fact, just yesterday, the price of Bitcoin surpassed $10,000. It's been above this before. It went up to about $11,000 or $12,000 at its all-time high, but it just passed $10,000 in anticipation for this halving event. That's because a lot of people who have never considered buying Bitcoin, who've never even heard of it, are now buying into the market, and the buyers drive the price up. Like I said, the price is likely to go down initially when all these miners depart from the mining space, but as a long-term investment, it will go up, and it will continue to go up, as some estimates say $10 million per Bitcoin. Here's why I think it's going to become even more. There's a few reasons why Bitcoin is comparable to gold, in the sense that the miners analogy and the fact that the gold gets driven up. Here's another reason why I think it's a very good comparison to gold. If you look up the price of Bitcoin in US dollars, you'll find that it fluctuates quite a bit. So it's not a very good tool to go and buy and sell things with, because maybe one day for a Bitcoin you can buy a car, and then the next day the price drops drastically, and now you can only buy a handful of groceries with it. So current price is $9,789. So I'll just take this number here. Let's say you were to buy 100 United States dollars worth of Bitcoin now at the current price. You will get 0.0102 Bitcoin, roughly estimating. One of the reasons I think Bitcoin has been slow as an adoption of a currency to be able to buy and sell goods with is because of the fact that it uses strange numbers. For example, if I were to tell you I had $100, most people have a fairly good idea of what you can buy with $100. You can fill up your gas tank, you can go buy a cart of groceries, you can maybe buy a nice jacket, you can buy the latest and greatest video game with $100. But if I told you I have 0.0102 Bitcoin, nobody has any idea what that's actually worth. Is that enough to buy a car, a Lamborghini? Is that just barely enough to afford a loaf of bread? I don't really know. Which is why Bitcoin itself is not likely to become the currency that you buy and sell your daily groceries with. That's why Bitcoin is often talked about as being the digital version of gold, because you won't go and take your gold bars to buy and sell goods with, but currency was backed by gold. There's likely to become in the future a new form of currency, and this currency will be backed by Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin backed by? It is backed by the collective processing power of the entire mining space. So worldwide, all of the computers that are mining Bitcoin, all of the processing power is estimated to be about the top 500 supercomputers in the world combined in total computing power. That's what it is backed by. And that is something that cannot become corrupted. It cannot become manipulated by governments or any one person. It is a scientific, mathematical number. The power of all of the miners in the mining space, all of these computers, they're roughly equivalent to 500 of the world's most powerful supercomputers. Which also means that Bitcoin is virtually indestructible. It's like the internet. It's never going away. Anything short of a massive solar flare that wipes out all computers on the face of the earth, the internet and Bitcoin are here to stay for many, many, many years. But as long as the computers are connected to the network, the internet and Bitcoin will always exist. And if a massive solar flare wipes out every computer on the face of the earth, we're going to have a lot more problems than you running out of all of your buying power. Now this right here is the real value potential behind the price of Bitcoin. 21 million. 21 million Bitcoin is the most amount of Bitcoin that will ever be produced in the history of history. That's it. That is the upper limit of the potential. And if you look, about 8.5 million have been mined so far. 87% of all Bitcoins have been mined. It is estimated that based on the halving events and the number of miners dropping out or being not able to afford it anymore, that all Bitcoin will not be mined until the year 21,300. When that comes, then there will be no more Bitcoin ever mined in the history of ever. This is why it's going to become 10, 20, 30,000, 30 million times more valuable than gold, because Bitcoin is the single most scarce commodity in the entire universe. The amount of gold that is available across the entire planet compared to the amount of gold that's still stuck in the ground that needs to be mined out, yeah, I mean, you can make an argument that gold is pretty scarce. There's some other elements like plutonium, uranium that are even more scarce like that, but Bitcoin is more scarce than any other natural metallic material, heavy metal that is in the entire universe, because you can go to another planet and find gold. You can go to another planet and find iron or nickel or whatever. You can go to another planet and even find liquid water or frozen ice that can be turned into liquid water. I predict that asteroid mining is going to become the world's first trillion-dollar industry. It will be the #1 industry of the future is asteroid mining, because it will become the most profitable. You can mine a single asteroid that might cost you $100 million to buy the equipment and put it into space, and you'll have $600 billion worth of rare earth minerals on that single asteroid. That's why asteroid mining is going to become very profitable. But because of asteroid mining, the amount of available gold and rare earth metals are going to go up, meaning the overall price of it will go up initially because of the cost to mine it from space, but in the long term, it'll go down. You will never, ever, ever be able to find any more Bitcoin. You cannot go to another planet or another universe or another galaxy and find more Bitcoin, because 21 million is it. The other reason for the massive growth potential of Bitcoin is the fact that 21 million compared to the number of humans on Earth is actually really, 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 really small. There is about 8 billion people on the Earth, and assuming that the majority of that doesn't die off from COVID, then in the future there's going to be 8 or more billion people. And if you have just one of those 21 billion Bitcoin that's going to become the most in-demand commodity in the entire universe, you will be like a trillionaire or a multi-billionaire at best. Because imagine every single person on Earth who has never bought a Bitcoin, never trusted it, never wanted to have anything to do with it. Now that is the only thing that you can buy and sell goods with. Bitcoin is it. You will no longer have currency, because the US dollar will be worthless. The Canadian dollar will be worthless. The euro will be worthless. But Bitcoin is here to stay. And if you have just one of that 21 million Bitcoin, you're in a pretty good place, long-term investing. If you paid $1,000 today before the halving event, and that Bitcoin goes up to $10 million, you've turned that $1,000 investment, 1/10 of a Bitcoin, into $1 million in as little as 10 years. That's a pretty good price comparison. And the reason for that estimate, the reason why financial advisors are giving that $10 million estimate, is because of the past trend of Bitcoin. You look at the history between the growth from the first halving to the second halving, and from the second halving to where we are now is a 1,500% increase. And if you take that $10,000 per Bitcoin and multiply it by 1,500%, you get $10 million. Now, at this point, this is where I want to give my caution, my advice, my caution to everyone out there. Stay as far away as you possibly can from altcoins. Now, if you don't know what altcoins are, they're basically anything that isn't Bitcoin. And some of them are rather good. Some of them are actually really, really, really dangerous, and I'll explain to you why. A lot of altcoins are based on companies. So this is what I mean. Gold had a value, currency was then backed by the government and the supply and demand chain. Bitcoin is backed by miners, but when you look at a lot of altcoins out there, these are all kinds of different companies that are having these coins. They are backed by the company themselves, and this is why it becomes extremely dangerous when you invest in altcoins. And that is because a lot of these companies are startups. which means that the company hasn't actually done anything. Statistically speaking, 90% of startups are going to go bankrupt within the first 3 years, and another 90% of that are going to go bankrupt within the first 5 to 10 years, and they're just no longer going to exist. So it's a really dangerous move to invest your money into a cryptocurrency that's backed by a company that could go bankrupt in 10 years. The second reason why it's very dangerous to do anything with altcoins is the fact that some of these companies are made specifically as a crypto scam. In fact, that was the company that I ended up working for, was developed and built as a, quote, shell company. Now, if you don't know what a shell company is, essentially a shell company doesn't actually do anything. There are some shell companies out there that are legally operating, but the good majority, 99.9% of shell companies are illegally operated or working in some kind of shady gray area at best. And the reason for that is because they're basically used as an intermediary, as a middleman between exchanges of cash, exchanges of wealth. So the company only exists to store your money in or to transit money back and forth overseas, but the company itself doesn't do anything. And the problem with that is that when these fake companies, like the one that I ended up working for, enter into the, quote, market space, they don't go IPO. IPO means initial public offering. That's when a company goes on the stock market and people buy and sell stocks based on their belief, their trustworthiness in that company. Stocks are backed by the performance of the company. Not always. A good majority of them are backed by how people feel about it. So there could be a company doing really badly, but if enough people believe in it, they'll invest. But when it comes to cryptocurrencies, it's unregulated. And there's some arguments why that's a good thing, and there's a lot more arguments why it's bad. And the reason it's bad is because it's unregulated, you can have these companies that literally exist and do nothing. They make no profits, they sell nothing, they are garbage companies. They have no value to them other than the fact that they fooled you into thinking that their crypto has any value. And what happens is, when the company eventually goes bankrupt, or the feds come in and start arresting people, and the company goes under, they take all of that assets, all of that money, and they dump it into a new company. They found a new company, they dump that money into the new company, and you're left holding the bags. You, the consumer, get steamrolled over. You, the employee of the company who was believed into thinking that they were going to change and revolutionize the world, are the one who gets steamrolled in the process because you lose your job. Everyone who invested loses their investment. People's lives get destroyed. But the CEOs and the CFOs and the CTOs of this company are going to take all of that money, found a new company, and go off in the wind. And nobody can sue them because that new company never did anything to wrong you, and the old company doesn't exist anymore. That is why I personally won't touch altcoins with a 10-foot pole, because I know a good majority of them are a scam. In fact, I know specific altcoins and specific companies that are a scam, and I really, really wish I could tell you their names right now just to protect you from buying any of these investments that are a fraud. But I can't, and I'm not going to, because these companies and these people are involved with active criminal investigations. That is right. I was on the phone last week with the FBI in New York talking about my former boss because of everything that's going on. So I don't want to do or say anything that's going to hinder or impact active criminal investigation, but I tell you, man, stay as far away from these crypto coins and the alt crypto coins as you possibly can, because some of these companies, I really wish I could tell you, some of these companies, they're going down, and their bosses are going down, and people are going to prison for 20, 30, 40 years because of this shit. As for Bitcoin law, yeah, that gets my full approval because it's not controlled by a single company or a single person or a single government, and that's what makes it so cool. On the note of that, I will say that the only altcoin that I would even consider putting money into would be if a reputable, well-established company makes their own coin. Like, for instance, Facebook's Libra coin, which is set to release later this year. It's supposed to be fairly stable and not fluctuate, which means it will be good for buying and selling purchases. My thought process is that they mostly just want it for their marketplace, to be able to buy and sell goods on the Facebook marketplace directly without having to do cash transactions or e-transfer or PayPal or whatever else you do. It's going to be done directly through Facebook's system. Now, that is something that I think would be good to put some money into based on the company Facebook, which is a well-established company that's been around for 15 whatever years now. They have a good business model. They've been making lots of money. They're going to be here for a while. If Google or Microsoft came out with their own cryptocurrency, those companies have been around for 30, almost 40 years now. So they have a well-established business model. They're actually doing and selling something to you as a product or a service, or the new iPhone, the latest MacBook Pro, the latest Windows tablet, Surface, whatever. They're selling things other than the crypto. A lot of these startup companies that are selling their crypto coin are selling just that. They're not doing anything. But Microsoft, Facebook, Google, these are all big companies that are doing and innovating, and they're in the space of tech, and they're revolutionizing the world. So these are companies that you would want to actually invest or put some money into their coins if they ever came up with them. And I think if Facebook's Libra coin turns out well, you could see a lot of these other companies like Google starting to make their own crypto coins. But as for startups, no, stay as far away from that as you possibly can. So to finish the video off, I want to share with you guys this really amazing marketplace to buy and sell Bitcoins on that I found. Now, this is a Canadian-made company, and it allows you to buy and sell Bitcoins. What makes this platform so special is I had to search forever to find a platform that allowed me to buy Bitcoins without a credit card, because 99% of the trading markets out there, or the Bitcoin wallets out there, they want to transfer the money from your credit card to the Bitcoin wallet. So if you don't own a credit card, or you've got bad credit, or you don't qualify for a credit card, you're screwed. You can't buy Bitcoin. But with Coinberry, you can use e-transfer, which means if you have online banking, you can send an e-transfer, and hey, that works a-okay. When it comes to buying in methods other than credit card, absolutely do not buy any Bitcoin with PayPal. And that is because PayPal is very open and subjective to scams. Typically, you have a trading platform, and it'll be like a buy and sell page like Kijiji or eBay. And somebody would say, hey, I'm selling 3 Bitcoin, and you're going to pay me this much through PayPal. Don't do that. Because what they're going to do, most likely, they're going to request that you send it through friends and family. Because when you send it through friends and family, PayPal doesn't take a cut out of what they'll get from you. So they get the full price from you. But when you do it that way, you can never get that money back. If they don't return to you those Bitcoins they promised you, now they've taken your money and run away. And you can say, hey, hey PayPal, they scammed me. Yeah, PayPal's, they're not going to do shit for you. They're not going to give you your money back. That money is gone. So don't ever buy Bitcoin using PayPal. But credit card, if you got it, sure. You can use this as well. Credit cards on Coinberry work. But if you only have online banking, you can still do e-transfer and buy it in Canada. That's another thing too. A lot of these exchanges, like the Cash App, for instance, or Robinhood, places where you can buy Bitcoin that are well known and especially well used by the millennials, you can't do it. They're only American. Coinberry, Canadian. It works. So my offer to you is, if you use the link below in this video, there is a link, and it is an affiliate link, I'll tell you that. I've never done any affiliate marketing on this channel before, but I really do believe in this. You go and you buy your $50 worth of Bitcoin, $100 worth of Bitcoin, $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, and then you wait. And maybe you'll be a millionaire in 10 years from now, and you can thank me for the information. But the coolest part about this affiliate link, it will give you $20 free to sign up, and once you deposit a minimum of $50, you'll get 20 additional dollars. So if you just wanted to put $50 in and then take it immediately out, you'll still get a free 20 bucks just for signing up. So, and it works too. I tried another affiliate link and it worked. I got 20 free dollars. I put about $700-800 worth into Bitcoin, and we'll see where it goes from there. Other than that, thank you for watching the video. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.